Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. Today's episode is part of our conversation series. I'm just one voice in this relationship diversity movement, and it's important to bring more unique perspectives into the conversation. Today, I'll be talking with Dr. Marie Thouin all about the concept of compersion. We touch on what it is, its history, and the 6 categories of factors that can promote or hinder the experience of compersion within relationships. But first, a little about Marie. Dr. Marie Thouin is the founder of Love Insight, a mindful dating and relationship coaching practice, where she helps people of all ages, genders, sexual and relationship orientations navigate the path of intimate love. She's a leading scholar and researcher on the topic of compersion in consensually non-monogamous relationships and completed her PhD on compersion on the topic. Her work has been featured in several publications and podcasts. She shares her research on her website and is in the process of preparing a groundbreaking book on compersion. Let's get into the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Relationship Diversity Podcast. I have got an incredible guest for you today. Today, we're talking to Dr. Marie Thouin, who is a mindful dating and relationship coach. And she is also one of the top researchers on the topic of compersion. So if you don't know what compersion is, stay tuned. I have not talked a lot about this, surprisingly, on this podcast because I think I've been waiting for you, Dr. Marie, to talk all about it. And I want to say one thing as to why I'm so excited about this conversation is because, as I know Dr. Marie will talk about compersion and what it is, and it is talked about a lot in the non-monogamous communities. However, this idea of compersion is such a life skill that, if learned, will really transform all of your relationships. Intimate, familial, business, friendships. There is so much power in this concept. So with that, welcome, Marie. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. This is so fun to be here. Such an honor. I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So the way I like to start all of these conversations is for everyone to learn more about you and what was your journey to get you to the place of being so interested in the topic of compersion, so that you did your whole thesis and, just became an expert in this. And tell us a little bit about your work.
Yeah, thank you. So really, I think it started very early in my life, my interest in non-normative relationships, or just different ways of thinking about love and relationships. Because my parents were very creative in their approach to relationships.
Mhm.
They decided that they wanted to have a child without cohabitating and without being a traditional couple or nuclear family. So right away, I grew up with, 2 parents who were independent thinkers, and I would go, 1 week at my mom's, 1 week at my dad's. And I learned that, we were not really part of the norm, but that it was feasible and okay to not be part of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of set me up with that mindset.
What year is that, if you don't mind me asking? Were you born? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I was born in 1984.
Okay, so that was a long time ago. They were Absolutely paving their own path, huh?
Exactly. Like they were able to kind of pick and choose like what they really wanted from life and from love. And they knew they didn't want marriage. They knew they didn't want cohabitation, but they wanted love and intimacy and parenting.
Mm.
So they were able to be very intentional, which, yeah, like, I mean, this was Quebec, rural Quebec. This was not California. This was not the Bay Area. Like, this was really weird for people. They were like,
Wow.
wait,
But
your
you grew
parents
up
are.
with it. So did it feel like just a normal thing for you? Or when did you realize that this was maybe not what everyone did?
Well, I think when I started going to school and people, like my kids, colleagues, in school would be like, "Oh yeah, like my parents are divorced. I understand, like I have the same setup." And I would be like, "No, like my parents are not divorced. They were never married." So I started realizing like no one really had the same setup and yeah, like I felt like I was different and I was kind of outside of a paradigm that was this shared understanding of how relationships should be. And that continued on actually through, high school and college when I started having my own romantic feelings and relationships and crushes, and realizing that monogamy didn't come naturally to me, or that was not something I would have just assumed, but people assumed it. People felt like, okay, well, if I'm in one relationship, that means I can't explore any others. And of course, we kind of take that for granted in our society growing up, but it always felt weird to me. I was like, why are we making that assumption?
Right.
I
Right.
think I can love or like or interact sexually with more than one person. And to me, there isn't an inherent contradiction.
Yeah.
So why, so I felt different and I had to constantly contrast, like my desire to fit in and be normal and be accepted with what felt like my authentic self. And how interesting that is and how painful that is when you feel like you have to choose between belonging and authenticity.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what was that journey? And I can see how that contributes to how you got to where you are.
Mhm.
What was that journey from, juggling the desire to want to be accepted? Especially, I think that's very normal as teenager. I have my own story about that, but and balancing that with your true self. Like, what did that journey look like?
Mm. Well, it looked like a lot of anger at the
Mm,
beginning. It looked like feeling like I had to rebel and I had to be at odds with society and at odds with the world and in order not to be just at odds with myself. It felt like I had to choose. Like, am I going
mhm.
to be, at odds with myself and try to mold myself into something different, or am I going to be at odds with the world? And thankfully, I think in my teenage years, I actually decided to be at odds with the world. And I'm saying thankfully because I think that's maybe an easier thing to undo than when you're training yourself to be at odds with yourself. I mean, both of those things are problematic for sure.
Right.
But being at odds with the world helped me feel like, okay, I can carve my own path. I will carve my own path. I'm going to give up on fitting in. I'm
Mm.
just not going to try anymore because that doesn't work for me.
Y-
So that comes with a lot of anger, a lot of resentment at the world. Of course, that's a painful stance to take. But then later on, when I finally started finding my people and communities of, people that I really felt connected with and could accept me how I was, that helped create a journey of healing and eventually feeling like, okay, I don't want to be at odds with the world. I mean, the world is, it's not perfect. And we all somehow, at some level, have experiences of feeling estranged from the world.
Yeah.
It's not a unique pain that I have. I think we all kind of relate to that, even people who are so-called more mainstream, who have different relationships with the world and with life. And why don't I try to bring love and connection and more congruence in the fact that, this is a weird world. We all have our own relationship with the norms and with what's expected of us and with society, and we all react to it differently, but ultimately we're in the same boat. And let's
Right.
bring love here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really believe that most people feel like an outsider at some point in their lives. And finding community is such a key into starting to feel a part of something, starting to not feel so different. We all do have our unique experiences. And I talk about that a lot in this podcast. Like, we've all had a unique past that has led us to this unique point in our lives and who we are, but finding other people who have similar interests or lifestyles is incredibly helpful. So how did that lead you into your studies and your work?
Good question. So I knew that human relationships were kind of my personal bottleneck in life, where, I felt the most pain, the most betrayal, the most conflict. And I really wanted to figure it out because that's also the thing I wanted the most. I wanted real intimacy, real authentic connection. So I had to really teach myself, with the help of others, of course, friends and mentors along the way, how to reconnect with my ability to love other human beings
Mhm.
from an authentic place. And I think that journey of, feeling really lonely in the world, feeling at odds with people, and then kind of teaching myself how to connect, since it was a learned skill, I was really kind of awakened to my ability to teach others.
Right.
Sometimes when it comes naturally, you don't really even think about it, so you can't really teach it. But the things I had to learn the most were the things I could then articulate and talk about that journey of finding our own authenticity within, a world that has norms, and how do we go outside the norm? How do we carve our own path? How do we be creative
Mm-hmm.
in our ability to have relationships, especially in the realm of romance? There's so much normativity, there's so much expectation, there's such a default path that we're all taught is the one path we should take, this kind of heteronormative, mononormative relationship path, like the relationship escalator, which is that idea that you meet, boy meets girl, they go on dates, they kiss, and then they have sex, and then they become exclusive, and then they start thinking about marriage and cohabitation, and then they have children. And there's this path that we associate with more love, more
Mm.
commitment, more success, more
Right.
validation. There's this whole system that we fall into. And I mean, it's not a one size fits all. It doesn't work for everyone. And, thankfully, the LGBTQ movement has, kind of showed everyone, like, okay, this is not the only way to be. That
Mhm.
heteronormativity has been questioned, and, it's not everywhere in the world where it is accepted now to be outside of that. But the LGBTQ movement has carved the path. But I always felt like mononormativity, the idea that monogamy is the only way to love, is kind of the next really big problem that people are not looking at.
I
And let's really
agree
look at it.
100% with you about that.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is I found that many times, and actually regardless of what relationship structure I was deciding to be in, that if I took this box that says I am only, I am only doing this right, which is keyword, if I
Mhm.
do it in this way,
Mhm.
um, led me feeling like I just wasn't doing anything right. And
Mhm.
what you were talking about is about carving your own path. It is scary, I think, to do that. And And at the same time, it can be very freeing to be super creative, to say, who am I? What do I want? Just like your parents did. What great role models.
Mhm.
They were way ahead of their time
Yeah.
in how they designed what worked for them. I love that.
Mhm.
So how did you get into what I'd love to move into is your
Yeah.
study with compersion. Can you
Yes.
define that, so that we're on the same playing field? We all understand where you're coming from with it, and then let's talk more about some of the things that you found in your research.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll premise that with saying that the reason why I think studying compersion is so important is that it directly has an impact on dismantling mononormativity,
Mm,
because a lot of mononormativity, which is this assumption that monogamy is the only valid way to love, is based on another assumption. And that assumption is that jealousy is the only natural or valid response to relationships outside of two people.
yes, yes.
So if we assume that jealousy is the only outcome of non-monogamy, then of course we're going to create a social system that's based on compulsory monogamy.
Mhm.
But if we start documenting the fact that there are other emotional responses, and namely compersion, which is the idea that you can feel positive things and experience positive attitudes in relation to your partner's other intimate relationships,
Mhm.
a lot of people say like, oh no, that's impossible. But no, I mean, I'm studying it. There's a lot of people who do feel that, who do experience that. And that kind of dismantles the whole system, really, because we're
Right,
showing that, okay, no, there's not just one way to feel about this.
right. Right. So, in your studies, I'm curious for people who compersion is more natural,
Mhm.
what are some of the characteristics of these people,
Mm.
where they think, that that's just natural for them to be really excited for their partner to have a wonderful experience with someone else other than them? What are those people like?
So, what I found is that there are categories of factors that do promote compersion.
Mhm.
And there are categories of factors that hinder the
Mm,
possibility of compersion. And it's not just about a personality type, um, it's really a contextual set of factors that depend on, someone's individuality, and it depends on someone's relationships, and it depends on someone's community surroundings. So there's
okay.
individual factors, relational factors, and social factors. And there are 6 factors altogether. I'll name them
Yeah.
all.
Yes.
So, in the individual category, there is the mindset. There's the ideological commitment to non-monogamous values and and mindsets. So, if someone is actually on board with non-monogamy, rather than someone who's been just dragged into it by their partner, someone who actually feels like, oh, yes, I actually want to be non-monogamous because I do believe in sexual and emotional autonomy, because I really do believe that I don't want to control my partner. And I really want, diversity of experiences for myself and for them. Like it really comes from a true desire. Then they're going to have, um, more likely to experience a lot of compersion.
Mhm.
The second factor is security within oneself. So the
Yes.
more secure you feel within yourself, the more self-confident, the better your self-esteem, and the better your self-care as well. Like the more resourced you are, then also the more likely you are to feel compersion. Which
Agreed.
again, like it's not like a binary. It's not like, oh, you either don't feel it or you feel it. Like it can fluctuate. You might feel
Mhm.
compersion certain days and then certain days you don't. I just want to also say that because it's not an on or off switch.
Right. There's fluidity in it, and circumstances and where you are. And I love the thing that you talk about self-care, because sometimes when I am not as good with my self-care, I do have daily self-care, but when I'm stretched thin, my ability to be happy for my partner is not there as much. And it gives me pause to say, what am I missing? What am I not filling within myself? So that's
Mhm.
absolutely.
Right. And then moving on to the relational factors, there's security within the relationship. So if you feel really secure in your relationship with a partner, you're going to most likely experience more compersion when they are going out and dating someone else, rather than if you feel like, well, your relationship is on the rocks and it's not totally connected and you don't feel totally safe or seen.
Yes, I've seen that in people I work with and myself. Yes, absolutely.
Right. And then there is your connection with the metamors, who are your partner's other partners. And actually, subsequent research has shown that this might be the most impactful factor of all.
Wow.
Um, if you feel that your metamor, the person that your partner is dating, is someone who adds to the plate, is good for your partner, is supportive of your relationship, is someone who is, someone maybe you can even relate to or at least respect without feeling overly threatened by them. There's kind of this sweet spot of like, I like you, I respect you, but I don't think you're so much better than me that you provoke my feeling threatened and feeling less than.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna have more compersion because all of a sudden maybe also I care about you, my metamor. I don't just care about my partner. I'm actually happy for both of you and your happiness together.
Yes. And I'm going to just give a shout out to my metamor because I really do feel that. And I was just talking with my husband the other day about that, of how supportive she is of my relationship and my family, and definitely gives me a sense of security. All that you just said, 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And then the third relational factor is the perception of benefits received from the other part, your partner's other relationships.
Mhm.
So if you feel that you're benefiting in some way, like, oh, because my partner is dating this other person, that gives me the freedom to go date someone else as well. Or
Mhm.
it alleviates the pressure that I might have felt to fulfill all of my partner's needs.
Mhm. Yep.
Or it gives me the feeling that, oh, I can live my life in integrity and full authenticity. Like, yes, it's possible. We're transcending the old paradigm together. That's
Mhm.
another vector of compersion, feeling proud and exalted and relieved from having to maybe be less than authentic in the way we love.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, so maybe also like, my partner dating another person is making our sex life or our love life better
Mhm.
because it's bringing this um, fresh air and fresh energy. So anything that you can pinpoint of like, oh wow, like yeah, that's actually a benefit to me and to us and to our relational ecosystem is going to promote compersion.
Yeah. Wow, that is all really powerful. And there's so much there. Um, I've heard this before, and I'm curious what you think about I know you talked a little bit about jealousy as one emotional, you know, feeling, and then compersion. I hear people talk about jealousy as the opposite of compersion, compersion the opposite of jealousy. And I don't know that I agree with that, but I'm curious with your expertise, what you think about that.
Mm. So I definitely will say that compersion and jealousy can coexist.
Hmm.
I would call them antonyms
Mm.
rather than opposites, because opposites sometimes will imply like, well, you can't have both at the same time. They're mutually exclusive.
Right.
But it's not true. It's a little bit like feeling bittersweet, feeling, sad and happy at the same time. Like we all know that we can have those emotions that are, like opposite or antonymical to each other. We can have them at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And and oftentimes that's what people in non-monogamous relationships do express. It's like they don't ever come to a point where there's no jealousy ever. It's usually more of a spectrum where maybe they feel more and more compersion and
Yeah.
less jealousy. Or, their jealousy is just maybe something in the background, but it doesn't really impact their relationship and it doesn't really impact their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to come back to the definition of compersion, because I think it's important to note that it's not only an emotion. Compersion can also be an attitude or a set of actions and even thoughts. I actually had the privilege to co-author an encyclopedia definition of compersion
Mm.
recently. And me and my co-author, Dr. Sharon Flicker, who also conducts compersion research, we came to the conclusion that there were 3 different definitions
Mm-hmm.
of compersion. And I think this speaks to, the ability of human beings to have compersion and jealousy at the same time. So the first definition was it's an emotion. It's like a range of positive emotions that we can feel in regards to our partner's other intimate relationships. But then the second definition was the range of attitudes, thoughts, and actions that are positive in connection to our partners and our relationships. And then the third one was the range of experiences that are positive and reactions to somebody else's positive experiences. So taking it out of the realm of non-monogamy and bringing it into a wider set of contexts.
Yeah, because I think that's what I was kind of referring to at the very beginning, because, that kind of experience of jealousy, it can be in friendships, it can be in business. You see someone who is in the same business as you and you become competitive and jealous instead of working together to be excited for what they're doing. And so it can lead in so many um, different types of relationship. And I do have a question. I suppose maybe we could have started with this, but trusting that the conversation is perfect. And that is the history of the word compersion. Where did that word come from?
Yes, it was coined in the 70s in an intentional community in San Francisco
Mm.
called Curista. And they were a polyamorous community, and they were, really centering free love as their main, reason for being together and experimenting around that. And they realized that they were feeling this feeling of compersion, but they didn't have a word for it. They were just like, oh my gosh, like it gives me such joy to know that my partner is happy with someone else. So the legend goes that they took out an alphabet board, which is kind of like a Ouija board,
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
an intuitive divination tool,
Yeah.
to create a word.
I
And
love
compersion
that.
is what came through. And it caught on. It caught on the poly communities and has just been used since then because, yeah, there is no other word to really mean that.
I love that. Whether it's true or not, I love that story. That's fabulous. So, um, another question I have is, let's say someone is really wanting to embrace more compersion in their life, but they're really struggling. What is one tip that you can give them to start on a journey of embracing more compersion in their mind, body, spirit?
Mm-hmm. Well, really, I would say identify the bottlenecks.
Mm.
Because my philosophy of compersion, the way I see it, is that, it's a beautiful experience that would be natural to us if we didn't have a bunch of blocks to it.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't have a bunch of, bottlenecks, so to speak. And for some people, the bottleneck is more at the relational level. With some people, the bottleneck is more at the mindset level. For some people, Maybe it's more at the, personal sense of security level. With some people, it's just that their relationship contexts don't lend themselves very well to it. For
Mhm.
example, if their partner is dating someone else that, they feel is not a good influence or is not really adding and is maybe, I don't know, maybe if you feel like your partner is dating someone who's toxic,
Right.
it's going to be really hard to feel compersion.
Definitely.
So I think first it's kind of assessing what is going on in my relational ecosystem, including what's going on in my own personal
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem and also in my social ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Am I also finding support from people outside of our relationship to kind of really validate that identity as non-monogamous? That's also very, very important to not feel isolated in
Right.
a big mononormative world and feeling like you're the weird one and you don't have any support or anyone else who's going to reassure you and normalize your feelings.
Right, which is, I think, why working with someone like you would be incredible because um, I can just feel that with if someone came to you and started expressing all of this, you would help them to feel okay with their feelings. And sometimes when there's someone in your corner allowing you to feel all the feelings, it starts to move that bottleneck, right? You start to then
Mhm.
become aware of things that are hidden underneath layers that you're scared to access or maybe unable to access. So,
Yeah.
how do you work with people in your coaching? How is your coaching, I guess, laid out? How do you, I know you have a 30-minute intro call to kind of assess things, but lead us through how you work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's very individualized. I don't
Mhm.
have a cookie cutter approach because everyone is on a different path, and it's really
True.
important to me to get to the sticky issues as quickly as possible, and of course I like to understand someone's whole world and understand who they are and what's going on. But really, we start there. We start with just getting to know each other a little bit, and then I give an assessment of what I might see are the bottlenecks for them.
Mhm.
I might, like see things that might not be obvious for them because maybe they feel ashamed of their situation or they're just kind of caught up in the emotion. So really, I mean, number one is taking away the shame and taking away the
Yes.
self-judgment and just normalizing like, okay, well, this is your situation. Let's bring love and compassionate witnessing there.
Mhm.
But then really like identifying like what are the sticky points? What do we need to focus on? And yeah, for some people it's going to be, mindset or the inner sense of self-love or self-care. So for some people it's going to be more relational. And maybe in some cases I ask like, can you see if your partner might want to come and do some couples counseling because it's more of a relational issue from what I can
Right.
tell. Or if their partner is not available to join, then maybe I'll work with them to create new patterns with their partner. Um, so it really depends. Like we just really focus in on what needs more love, attention, tools, skills, etc.
Right. And I think that, people can definitely go on the journey on their own, and working with someone like Marie can really get you there faster, right? Just
Mhm.
by the reflection that you provide to your clients will help you bust through the things that are holding you back much quicker. So, with that, Marie, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, well, I have two different websites for
Mhm.
folks who are really interested in compersion. I would definitely recommend going to whatiscompersion.com. And I have all of my research available for free and
Wow.
other really great resources and a blog, and also information about my coaching and a link to book a free intro 30-minute session with me so we can do a vibe check and see if we want to work together.
Beautiful.
And I also work a lot with singles who are in the dating realm or want to date or maybe afraid of dating, or just, I do dating coaching for anyone who's into growth, into self-knowing, into mindfulness. And you can learn more about that niche, that side of my practice at loveinsight-dating.com.
Beautiful.
And I talk about both of these topics on my Instagram page, which is love_insight_dating. So please follow me on Instagram and let's connect.
Yes. So if she described you in who she works with and how you can work with her, please connect. And definitely your Instagram has a wealth of information. So we'll link all of that in the show notes. And this has been a really enlightening conversation for me. And I know for everyone listening. So thank you so much, Marie, for sharing your wisdom. And everyone, please go and connect with her. You will learn so much on the daily. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my website, carriejaroslow.com, Instagram, or TikTok. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are. Are you feeling stuck or unfulfilled in your intimate relationship? Do all your relationships end in the same way? Do you feel like you've lost the spark in your current relationship? Can you never even find one person who you want to explore a relationship with? If you answered yes to any of those questions, are sick and tired of feeling like a failure in your relationships, and desperately desire a different experience, then my 8-week deep reprogramming intensive may be the answer for you. In this program, I work individually with you for 8 transformative weeks. We'll identify the subconscious programming that's keeping you stuck and shift it to a new affirming belief systems. We go deep, we get real, we get results. This is healing unlike anything you've ever experienced before. Here's what people are saying. Jordan from North Carolina said, more has shifted in 8 weeks of working with Carrie than 10 years of psychotherapy. Jane from Sanford, North Carolina said, it's honestly changed my life. And Cassie from Santa Barbara, California said, Carrie's laser precision in helping me diagnose where the stuck energy was helped me make positive movement in our first session alone. Absolutely transformational. I love being a guide and witness to these courageous people who claim that they were done with their past experiences and ready for something different. I'm opening a limited number of spots for 2023 and would love to help you permanently transform your relationship experience. To set up a free 30-minute clarity call where I'll help you uncover your number one block to fulfilling relationships, connect with me through the link in the show notes. You are worthy of experiencing deep fulfillment and love in your relationships. This intensive work will help you get there.